Imagine finding a stranger under your bed in your new apartment. This is precisely what happened to me a year and a half ago. Freshly 22 and bursting with the excitement of independence, I had just moved into my very first apartment. It was a day like any other, a routine trip to retrieve my mail from the apartment complex entrance while chatting with my boyfriend over the phone. Upon returning, I settled on my bed, engrossed in the mundane task of opening mail. My phone slipped from my grasp, tumbling down to the floor and disappearing beneath the bed. An unexpected turn of events unfolded as I laid down on the floor to retrieve it. There, in the dim underbelly of my bed, was a human figure lying still, their back towards me, head tucked into their chest. My heart hammered in my chest as I stifled the urge to scream. The figure didn't move, didn't react, and most importantly, didn't see me. I was invisible to this intruder, a fact that I latched onto as I tried to rationalize the surreal situation. Summoning my courage, I reached out, grabbing my phone and trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. "Sorry, I dropped my phone," I told my boyfriend, my voice impressively steady. "I'm just gonna take a shower and call you back." The call ended, leaving me alone with my pounding heart and the silent figure under my bed. The automatic lock on my apartment door had always provided a sense of security, but in that moment it felt more like a trap. I was locked in with a stranger who had somehow invaded my personal space. I tiptoed away from the bed, forcing myself to remain calm. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, desperately trying to make sense of the situation. Who was this person? How had they gotten into my apartment? And most crucially, what was I going to do now? Heart pounding, I hung up the phone, my mind racing as I contemplated the unsettling discovery beneath my bed. The shower seemed like the perfect excuse to compose myself and formulate a plan. The comforting hum of the water drowned out the whirlwind of thoughts screaming in my mind. I tried to focus, to push away the terror gnawing at the pit of my stomach, but it was a daunting task. As the steam filled the room, I felt a temporary sense of security. The intrusive presence in my bedroom seemed a world away, even if just for a moment. Yet the reality of the situation was inescapable. There was an intruder in my home and I had to figure out what to do. I contemplated my options, each one seeming more terrifying than the last. Should I confront the person? No, that was too dangerous. Should I escape through the window? But what if they heard me and gave chase? The more I pondered, the more my heart pounded in my chest. A chilling thought crossed my mind. What if they had been there for longer than I realized? What if they had seen me before? Every memory of the day became tainted with paranoia, each moment potentially observed by the stranger beneath my bed. I decided that calling the police was the most viable option. I would have to do it quietly, though, to not alert the intruder. Suddenly, every decision was a matter of life and death with no room for error. I turned off the water, the silence of the apartment creeping back in. The steam began to dissipate, taking with it the illusion of safety. The fear returned tenfold, the threat of the unknown lurking just outside the bathroom door. I wrapped myself in a towel, the fabric feeling like the only barrier between me and the potential danger. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. It was time to face the situation head-on. Exiting the shower, wrapped in a towel, I cautiously re-entered the bedroom, my eyes never leaving the mysterious figure beneath my bed. The reality of the situation was setting in, and I knew I had to act fast. The next steps I took would be crucial, and there was no room for hesitation. I dialed 911 with shaky hands, attempting to maintain composure as I whispered details of the unnerving situation to the emergency operator. My voice was a hushed murmur, barely above a whisper, as I relayed the information. "There's someone under my bed. I don't know who they are." The words tumbled out in a rush, a mixture of fear and disbelief lacing each syllable. I kept my gaze firmly locked on the bed, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Beneath the mattress, the intruder remained still, their back towards me. I could see the rise and fall of their breath, a chilling reminder of the reality of my predicament. Each breath they took felt like an echo of my own. A symphony of terror played out in the silence of my apartment. The operator's voice was a soothing contrast to my own, their calm demeanor a lifeline in the midst of my panic. "Help is on the way," they assured me, their words a beacon of hope in the darkness. Yet, as comforting as their promises were, they did little to quell the fear gnawing at my insides. The seconds ticked by painfully slow. each one amplifying the sense of dread that had taken root within me. I clung to the phone as if it were my only lifeline, the operator's voice my only source of comfort. Suddenly, I noticed a shift in the figure beneath my bed, a subtle movement, barely noticeable but enough to send my heart into overdrive. Had they heard me? Were they aware of my presence? 1,000 questions raced through my mind, each one more terrifying than the last. I relayed this new development to the operator, my voice barely a whisper. Their reassurances did little to ease my fear. "Stay calm," they urged, their words a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding within me. While on the call, I began to notice subtle movements from the person beneath the bed. Panic intensified as my mind raced through the possibilities. The waiting had turned into a cruel game of cat and mouse, the silence only amplifying the terror of the unknown. Suddenly the person shifted, their back straightening as they turned to face me. The room seemed to shrink around me, the air growing heavy with the weight of uncertainty. The face of the stranger under my bed was a map of desperation and fear, mirroring my own feelings. His eyes, wide and anxious, met mine, and in that moment, I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. He opened his mouth, words tumbling out in a shaky stream. I didn't mean to scare you," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. He explained, his gaze never leaving mine, that he had been evicted from his apartment and with nowhere else to go, he had sought refuge in what he thought was an unoccupied unit. His voice was laced with a palpable sense of despair and desperation that echoed in the silent room. His story unfolded, painting a picture of a man at the end of his rope. He had been living under my bed, hiding in the shadows, too afraid to venture out in case he was discovered. He hadn't expected anyone to move in so soon, and had been caught off guard when I arrived. His confession hung in the air between us, a heavy truth that was hard to digest. A part of me wanted to scream, to run away from this surreal situation. But another part, a part I hadn't known existed, felt a twinge of empathy for this stranger. Here was a man, lost and desperate, driven to hide under a stranger's bed out of sheer necessity. His eyes pleaded for understanding, for compassion. I just didn't know where else to go," he finished, his voice barely a whisper. The fear in his gaze was replaced by a flicker of hope, as if my understanding could somehow absolve him of his intrusion. A wave of empathy replaced some of my fear as I listened to his plight, yet the situation remained precarious. As I stood there, wrapped in my towel, phone still clutched in my hand, I realized that life was far more complicated than I had ever imagined. Soon, the distant wail of sirens signaled the arrival of the police. The sound was a beacon of relief, a promise of safety in the midst of a surreal ordeal. The intruder seemed to stiffen at the sound, his eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and resignation. With the authorities nearing, the reality of his actions began to sink in. As the pounding footsteps echoed up the stairwell, the stranger beneath my bed began to plead. His voice quivered with desperation as he begged for understanding, explaining his circumstances once more. The echo of his pleas hung heavy in the air, painting a stark picture of desperation and despair. The police arrived swiftly, their presence filling the apartment with an overwhelming sense of authority. They moved with calculated precision, their trained eyes quickly taking in the scene. The stranger was coaxed from his hiding place, his figure emerging from beneath the bed with an air of resignation. Even as the man was detained, the officers treated him with a measure of compassion that was surprising, yet comforting. They listened to his story, their faces masked with professional empathy. The handcuffs seemed almost an afterthought, a necessary procedure rather than a punishment. As I watched the stranger being led away, his earlier pleas echoed in my mind. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for the man, his desperate circumstances driving him to such lengths. Yet the violation of my personal space remained a chilling reminder of the potential dangers lurking in the shadows. As the police departed, leaving me alone in the once again quiet apartment, I was left to reflect on the strange turn of events. The intrusion had been a terrifying ordeal, yet it had also revealed a stark reality about life's unpredictability and the lengths to which desperation could drive individuals. In the end, this encounter served as more than just a chilling incident in my first apartment. It served as a harsh reminder of the complexities of human desperation and the unexpected challenges life could throw. It was a lesson learned, a wake-up call that life is not always as straightforward as it seems. It's complicated, it's messy, and at times it can be downright terrifying.